Okay, we're live as far as I can understand. It's fascinating to actually flex my abilities with technology. Remind myself that I actually can do things that might work.
It's interesting that you bring this up today because I am learning HubSpot, 10 years as a Salesforce user, and Google Sheets in between. If you know, you know. Um, but this is the first time I'm using HubSpot, and it is, learning something new is a reminder that there is a learning curve. So you can have these ideas in your head about things that you want to do, but until you actually just dive in and try and do it, um, you're not going to get anywhere. So it's like deep breath, allow the mistakes to come, embrace the frustration. There will be frustration. There is frustration. And I've actually been using their AI assist, and it's been really helpful.
Nice. Okay, that's a shout out for HubSpot. Always nice to get some good technology. We are actually a HubSpot partner. So also a shout out to HubSpot, and we find that we like it because it has adoption, right? Tools are great, but if nobody uses them or there's resistance, it's kind of like, what's the point of the tool? Even if it's you got a Ferrari in the garage, but nobody wants to drive it. So, if instead you have the Yugo that, actually is useful and everybody is willing to take it out around the corner. I know.
I'm going to
Shout
disagree.
shout out.
I'm going to disagree. I think adoption is great. I don't think adoption is necessary to derive value. As someone who has
Oh,
sold software whose insights are critical to decision making, if you derive those insights but can only get those insights from this particular software, um, and you only need those insights once a month, but they drive a meaningful portion of your business, is it okay that your users are only using it once a month?
interesting. Okay, I see your point, but I mean, this is now we're going to start to quibble on meanings of words because if to me adoption is using it once a month. If you're using it once a month, is what the value prop is, right? So it has adoption. The issue that I run into is that you have a tool that really should be used to collaborate on a day in day out basis. And the reality of the use is it's not used, or it's used once a month instead of daily, and therefore the value is not achieved, or at least the promise of the tool is not achieved. And then you're paying for the daily use, even though your use is only once a month. And so, to your point, at that point, the Google Sheet is actually a more efficient, better tool if actually people are using it for sales collaboration. I mean, because the intent of like CRM is so that I'm going to start over for a second. I was at an org that did a very large Salesforce implementation 100 years ago. And the reason for the implementation was there were six different divisions with six different salespeople all selling to the same customer and all undercutting each other because sometimes there were overlapping products or services and they were negotiating against themselves. And the customer knew it, but the internal teams did not. So
That's a problem.
you think about that. Oh, you think?
Well, this is no disrespect to Salesforce, but that just means we need to find a way to get to continuity. And you can get continuity on Google Sheets if we're all shared and working off the same sheet.
Again, utility, tools.
No, I think if your point is if you're using it at the expected cadence and deriving the value out of it, that is adoption. Adoption does not
Yeah,
mean you have to use it every day to get value, or does it mean that that's your definition of adoption?
that's correct. I mean, I think that's where it's a bit of a semantic argument, but at the same time, I think the genesis of value versus spend is an important one. And, the value equation, to your point, could be very different, right? If I derive value once a month, that's still value. And then so cost to tool, cost to value, I'm winning, even if the utility is only once a month. Whereas, some of the CRM systems are built on a per user per month basis. And so, the utility value starts to decline potentially if you're getting less adoption. And then the other problem that I mentioned is, what's the purpose of the tool relative to the use? Maybe that's
Oh,
the better way.
that's a great point because a lot of times at one of my previous stops, you had many different types of personas that you were selling to. And the persona who objected the most to the way we priced um, always said, well, I'm not using a lot of data. Why do I have to pay for all of what you offer when I only need this much?
Yeah,
And our position was, well, that much is the value that we provide, is that we're the only place that you can get that. And so, in
right.
some regards, it's a phrase that I can't think of, but
Yeah. All right, well, there you have it. It's and then you have to objection handle, which is okay. This is and then there's product market fit because sometimes you're like, well, I love you. I'd love to give you our tool. It's clear that we're not a good fit for you, even though you want the tool. And if we were a good fit, then then this price would seem reasonable.
all things that have been said. Well, it seems like a good time to ask you, Yo Munir, what's in your LinkedIn feed? Yo!
Rob, that's a great question. And I have been traveling quite a bit this week, which means that my attention to my LinkedIn feed has been less than optimal. But I have noticed that there are quite a few of those. We talked about this a bit ago, but it's well, this week it was I wrote a book. And I don't know whether this is just, they're targeting me because of the type of position I'm in. But I have at least two contacts that have written books, and one of them has done a very interesting promotion, which is I'm giving away 50 free copies to the first 50 people who put book in the comments. And we've talked about this before that a comment is worth like 5 likes. So it's a clever way of promoting the fact that this individual has a book. And I found that to be an intriguing trend that continues. But the whole idea of like, I've written a book as thought leadership, and I'm wondering how much of that was these people had already been working on it, or LLMs and ChatGPT have accelerated the potential of them creating long form content. And I don't know the answer to that, but it was interesting to note a couple of folks who have recently written books, and that was what was in my feed this week. Don't think it's a trend. Well, might be a trend. Don't have hard evidence, but that's what I noticed. How about you, Rob? What's in your feed?
Wow. Well, thanks for asking. Something that really struck me was a post about Gucci wiping their Instagram clean with the digital reset
Mm,
of their new creative director. And I thought that was a really interesting marketing tactic and choice. And actually, of course, I started thinking about resetting my own Instagram feed, even though I don't post to my feed anymore. Does anybody? But it got me thinking about the role of social media moving forward with the acquisition of TikTok or the change in ownership of the accounting and revenue generation in the US, um,
yeah.
and what that means for marketers moving forward when the both X and TikTok have been so highly politicized.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. I think the idea of wiping a feed clean to start over is a one. It's a brand expression in and of itself. The capacity to say I can reset because I am so well known as a brand, and that builds then this great sense of expectation. Like now, I actually can't wait to see what they put after they've taken everything down. It's a clever that's a clever idea, and like many things, you'll get a lot of fast followers who inauthentically take their feed down because they're following the idea as opposed to owning authentically that idea. And then it becomes, it's kind of done. It's the uniqueness in this world, the new idea that is special, and that are a way of, we talked about, I think, Picasso last week, like, great, good artists borrow, great artists steal. But if there's a way to, again, for your particular brand, authentically wipe your, so that you have a story behind why you're doing it different from Gucci, but related, that becomes more interesting to me. But what I see tend to happen in marketing is you get a lot of people that just copy without owning the idea behind it, and that to me always, not always, but often rings false. There are some people that can do it and they get away with it, but sometimes it just rings false. What do you think?
Yeah, um, I think there's the crowd that is doing it for attention. There's the crowd that's doing it for fun,
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
right? Like I'm wiping my Instagram clean too in honor of the new
Yeah.
Gucci creative, and it's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know a comedian or Wendy's
Sure.
who likes to there's a tone, it matches their tone. Um,
Right. Well, that's authentically owning it, right?
yeah,
In my world, that
I would agree with you in terms of is the connection, and we've talked about this before, is the connection to the trend aligned with your tone of voice and who you are as a brand, or is it clearly misaligned and you're trying to capture attention based on a trend?
yeah, that's my I think that was a great summary, Rob. The idea of a brand who could do it because their brand position is fun, their social brand position, which is also something that you've talked about with me in the past, which is, can you have a slightly different brand position within different media and different creative touch points, which is something that we look for. It still has to have a thread. It has to be within the same family of the brand. Otherwise, it's too much of a cognitive dissonance. But the idea of the social tone is a little bit more playful than the television tone, as an example, is something interesting. And the customer service tone is a little different than the social tone, but it can't be too different because then it's a disconnect. But what do you think about that? Is there a space for different tonality and different media, or should the social tone adhere strictly to the brand tone everywhere?
I like that, and I think you can have different tones. I think having a tone though is important, and I think what we see more often than not is no tone, is actually not
Mm.
taking a position, um,
Hmm.
and that is when you get into trouble when you start aligning with trends, is because the misalignment is actually not that it's going against your brand voice, it's that your brand voice is trying to appease everybody and playing on the fence, um, and trying to be diplomatic in terms of how you position yourself for fear of retribution, whether that's retribution from your customers, or retribution from your new audience, or retribution from government entities. I think not having conviction in your brand voice is just as troubling, and probably where we see. people not sure of how they should position themselves on social, for instance, because it's not misaligned with their general position. It's misaligned with not having a position at all.
This is fantastic insight. And I do think that having no position is a problem. And the work, right? We talk about the work. Marketing is a lot of fun, but it does require work. And the work is making decisions. And then sometimes there's a freezing of like, I don't want to make a decision because somebody might not like it. Instead of, I'm going to make decisions, they're going to be well thought through. I'm going to document the decisions. I'm going to get stakeholder buy in of my decisions. And then I have a platform for amplification. That's the that's the model, right? That's the work of marketing. And that's the work of marketing that actually will continue past this AI generation of content. Yeah, AI can generate content for, free in large quantities at scale, but it doesn't mean that it's adhering to a brand platform if the brand platform is not developed or agreed and bought in across an org and and stakeholders actually. And some of those stakeholders are your customers. So if the AI decides to write something and it's off script, if you will, or it's outside the brand, your customers may be the ones that tell you that's not you. And part of marketing is creating that platform for your voice, for your tone, for your amplification, for what you believe. And those are uniquely human aspects of creating touch points. And I think that then the work continues to be that communication of the why. I am going to do this because I believe this because of this, and now I'll create content for it. I think that's the work, and it can be fun. But it does take choice architecture. It takes actually committing, and I don't know if you've seen this. Um, I have found that we don't always give ourselves the chance to make real decisions. We're very much equivocating and we're not able to commit. But what do you think? I mean, is that something I'm off base on? Is that something you see?
I think that's, as someone who doesn't have a substantial public persona, I can relate to that as an individual in terms of committing to something that you're putting forward, something that you've talked to me for decades now is what's your brand and having a personal brand and the importance of being able to communicate not just what you stand for, but what you've accomplished. Something as simple as, what have you done? Oh, tell me more about it. Think about it from an interview process. Um, and so I think thinking like a brand, or thinking like an individual, depending on whether you're the brand or the individual, is an interesting exercise. And I, and maybe most of us, feel most opinionated about brands that don't make that choice, that aren't anchored to a mission statement. That we can't. If you ask me, what are they about? I can't tell you what they're about. That is probably where we have the most tension.
That's again another great insight about the importance of purpose in branding. There was a moment, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, it might have been longer, where purpose and brand purpose gained a lot of traction. And then it went away, and then I think we had another moment then where it was like performance, 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 and who cares about your purpose? Your purpose is making money, and the Google jackpot is working. I just put the 25 cents in. I get a customer for $1. I'm winning. 4x ROAS, and off I am to the marketplace. And now what we're starting to see with the introduction of LLMs diffusing the power of the Google machine is the importance of creating a connection with the customer to make you stand out amongst the stuff that gets pulled or pushed in front of you. And that's the next road is, how do you create that meaningful connection, and what's you said it, sense of purpose. What's the purpose of the brand so that I can have a connection with the why I'm going to purchase this one versus this one.
In a world of infinite content, and where all media is marketing, to borrow again from Doug Shapiro and the like, um, the impetus on brands to define their values and their mission, I think, is more important than ever. I in the conversation about knowing what a brand is about, I was thinking about Coca-Cola as an example, and I still, even though I was born after this campaign launched, I'd like to buy the world of Coke. Still resonates 50 plus years later. And if you ask me in the 70s and 80s when Coca-Cola had tremendous merchandising, the rugbies, even that you owned, I could tell you what they were about. I can't tell you what they're about now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's sad. I mean, some of that is societal. Like, we've lost this sense of connection to each other, and we've lost the sense of purpose to why we do the things we do. And we've also become so I was going to say hypercritical, but it's I think it's almost worse. It's like we don't believe anymore. They're like, we have lost the power and the magic of mystery and belief. And um, we've talked about Yuval Noah Harari in the past, but he talks about the magic of the human species is the capacity to tell stories and then live within the stories that we tell. And so pardon me, this we're starting to break the stories almost, and we're not living in the same story anymore, and that causes again dissonance, right? Talk about I am unable to believe in what Coke believes in, because if Coke starts to believe in something, it might piss somebody off. And Coke is trying to believe, Coke is trying to be for everybody. But these days, nobody wants anything that's for everybody. They want to be separated versus together. And yet I still firmly have, I'm a, I'm an optimist, and I firmly believe in the power of commonality and the things that are common in that overarching story, and the capacity for a brand to own a position that is authentic to them and would speak to a broad audience if they commit to their beliefs and are able to articulate those beliefs in an authentic way.
Connection. I think what you said earlier as well about connection is critical. And so when we think about moments of joy in our lives, it is typically around connection and seeing others be kind to each other and uplifting. And I think we have to remind ourselves that that is what makes us that common ground. That's what makes us connected.
Yeah, that's great. And that's also why we like social media. It provided a platform to connect ourselves to brands, to each other, to people at distance. Used to be you had to write a letter and wait a month. And now I can instantaneously find out what somebody across the world is doing and up to, and have that sense of connection to their experience. The thing we collectively need to continue to work on then is, how do those moments of love and connection and joy not get over optimized, so there's this falseness. You talked about the internal brand, and then there's people that outwardly project my life is perfect when inside the internal life is not so great, and nobody then wants to share the messy side, or then there's oversharing of the messy side. and and how do we balance the external facing brand? How do we not over optimize a personal brand, but have an appropriate amount of personal brand and an appropriate amount of messiness and also an appropriate amount of actual one-to-one human connection and experiences versus all digital? And I think that's another clutter breaker in the world of not just social media, but marketing, the capacity for brands to then develop and derive real world experiences and connections becomes even more important. And then there are brands that are clever about it where they insert or create the Instagrammable moment or the now TikTok moment, the capacity for an individual to go to a thing and do a thing that shows that they've been to the experience, which still feels a little bit over optimized because of what you're talking about. Like there's still a disconnect if I'm only there to perform. It's performative, not actual genuine connection.
Interesting. Interesting. That's something to dive into, I think, is experiential and its importance now, to your point about being behind screens and lacking connection. And so going out to concerts and shows, I'm seeing a lot of experiential coming from music, uh, and 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 having it not just be a show, having
Right.
it actually accentuate the connection. Maybe something to
Yeah,
consider for next episode.
I like it. And with that, we can also talk about ways that you can connect within Zoom calls by being active within using the tools around you, like a chat, a response, a poll, things that connect you to the experience. But let's put a pin in it. This has been great. It's always wonderful to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to our next time next week.
Wonderful, Munir.
Hey, Rob, we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Stopping.